The diplomatic station Concordia floated in neutral space, a massive structure of gleaming metal and glass where the galaxy's most powerful species gathered to make decisions. Inside its halls, representatives from 847 different worlds walked together, discussing trade agreements, territorial disputes, and the endless business of keeping the galactic peace. Ambassador Margaret Torres stepped off the human transport ship with her small delegation. She had served Earth for 12 years in this role, always careful, always diplomatic. The galaxy still saw humanity as children, primitives who had stumbled into space travel only 15 years ago. Every meeting was a test. Every word was judged. Behind her walked the Chen family. Dr. Robert Chen served as the cultural attaché. His wife Linda worked in the linguistics department, and their daughter Lily skipped between them, her 8-year-old eyes wide with wonder. This was her first visit to Concordia, and everything amazed her. "Stay close, sweetie," Linda said, holding her daughter's hand. The Vraxian delegates passed them in the corridor. They were tall beings nearly 3 meters high, with scales that shimmered purple and gold. They did not look at the humans. To them, humanity barely registered as worthy of notice. The Vraxian Empire controlled 600 star systems. Earth controlled 4. The summit began in the Great Hall, a circular chamber where delegates sat in ascending rings based on their species' rank in the galactic order. Humanity sat in the lower sections among the newer members. The Vraxians occupied the highest tier, looking down on everyone below. Margaret listened to the proceedings with practiced patience. Trade routes, mining rights, border disputes between species humanity had never heard of. Hours passed. Lily grew restless in her seat, fidgeting with a small toy her father had given her. "Can I go look at the gardens?" she whispered. "Please?" Robert glanced at his wife, then at the chamber. The session would continue for hours. The gardens were just outside, visible through the massive windows. They had passed the security check. Concordia was supposed to be the safest place in the galaxy. "All right," he said quietly, "but stay where we can see you through the window." "Don't go far," Lily's face lit up. She slipped from her seat and walked to the exit, her small shoes making no sound on the polished floor. A few delegates glanced at her with curiosity. Human children were rare in these halls. The garden stretched across an entire section of the station, filled with plants from 1,000 different worlds. Lily walked among them, touching soft leaves, smelling strange flowers that glowed in colors she had no names for. She saw a path leading deeper into the garden, where a fountain made of crystal sang with water that floated in spirals. She followed the path, not noticing the small sign in Vraxian script that marked the area as restricted. The translation device her parents had given her was still sitting on her seat in the chamber. The fountain was beautiful. Lily sat on its edge, trailing her fingers through the impossible water. She laughed as it tickled her hand. "Primitive presence detected in restricted zone." The voice came from behind her. Lily turned to see a Vraxian Imperial Guard, his ceremonial armor gleaming, his weapon already in his hand. The guard's face showed no emotion, no hesitation. "I'm sorry," Lily said, standing quickly. "I didn't know. I'll go back." The guard's training was absolute. Vraxian protocol was clear. Non-approved species in restricted areas were security threats. Security threats were eliminated. There was no room for questions, no pause for consideration. The Empire had maintained order for 3 centuries through absolute enforcement of its laws. The weapon hummed once. Lily Chen fell beside the fountain, her blood mixing with the floating water, turning it red. In the chamber, Robert Chen glanced out the window. He did not see his daughter. His heart jumped. He stood scanning the gardens. Linda joined him, her face tight with sudden fear. "Where is she?" Linda whispered. They moved to the window, pressing against the glass. Other delegates turned to look. Margaret Torres stood, sensing something wrong. Then they saw the Vraxian guard walking back from the fountain area, holstering his weapon with practiced efficiency. And they saw the small form lying still beside the crystal water. Robert's scream cut through the chamber like a knife. He ran, Linda behind him, their diplomatic composure shattered. Margaret followed, her face pale. The other human delegates rushed after them. They found Lily in the garden, her eyes open but seeing nothing, a single burn mark through her chest. Robert collapsed beside her, gathering her into his arms, rocking back and forth. Linda's sobs echoed across the station. Security forces arrived within minutes. The Vraxian guard stood at attention, making his report with cold precision. The child had entered a restricted zone. He had followed protocol. The execution was clean and proper. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within the hour. Margaret Torres stood before them, tears streaming down her face, her voice shaking with rage and grief. She was a child, Margaret said, an 8-year-old girl who made a mistake. She didn't deserve to die. The Vraxian representative remained standing, his posture perfect. Our protocols exist for security purposes. All species agree to abide by station regulations. The restricted zones are clearly marked. In Vraxian script, Margaret shouted. A script she couldn't read. She was a child. The council moderator, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, spoke with the voice of centuries of tradition. The council recognizes the tragedy of this incident. However, security protocols are essential for maintaining order. The Vraxian guard acted within established parameters. Parameters? Margaret's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. You're calling the murder of a child parameters? Ambassador Torres, control yourself, the moderator warned. This emotional display is unseemly. The council debated for 3 hours. In the end, they issued their ruling. The Vraxian Empire would pay a fine of 50,000 credits to the Chen family. The guard would receive a 2-week suspension without pay. The incident was regrettable but closed. Margaret Torres stood before the council one final time. Her tears had dried. Her voice was steady. You will regret this decision, she said quietly. All of you. The Vraxian representative actually laughed. Is that a threat, Ambassador? From a species that controls 4 small systems, we are the Vraxian Empire. We have maintained order in this galaxy for 300 years. What will you do? Throw rocks at our ships? Margaret did not respond. She turned and walked from the chamber. The human delegation followed. They collected the Chen family, still cradling Lily's body wrapped in a white cloth. Together they boarded their ship and departed Concordia Station. The council dismissed the incident and returned to business. Humanity was young, they reasoned. The species would grieve, then learn to accept galactic reality. In time, they would understand that order required hard rules enforced absolutely. But as the human ships entered FTL and vanished from Concordia's sensors, something changed in the Sol system. Communication channels went silent. Human delegations across the galaxy began withdrawing. Trade ships returned home and did not leave again. Earth had gone quiet. The galaxy barely noticed. Humanity was insignificant. Their silence was meaningless. They would learn how wrong they were. In 72 hours, the galaxy would discover what humanity truly was when their children were killed. 72 hours after Lily Chen's death, every communication channel in the galaxy received the same transmission. It came from Earth, broadcast with enough power to reach even the most distant systems. President Sarah Mitchell appeared on screens across 847 worlds. She was a woman in her 60s, gray-haired and normally soft-spoken, but the face that looked out from the transmission was carved from stone. People of the galaxy, she began. 72 hours ago, the Vraxian Empire murdered a human child. Her name was Lily Chen. She was 8 years old. She wandered into a garden marked in a language she could not read. For this, she was executed without warning, without mercy, without hesitation. The transmission showed footage of Lily, laughing and playing. Then it showed her body beside the fountain, the water still red with her blood. The Galactic Council has ruled this matter closed. A fine was paid. The murderer received a 2-week suspension. They believe justice has been served. They believe humanity will accept this. They believe we will move on. President Mitchell's voice remained calm, but something in her eyes made viewers across the galaxy suddenly uncomfortable. They are wrong. We gave the Vraxian Empire and the Galactic Council 72 hours to surrender those responsible for Lily's death. They refused. They laughed at us. They called us primitives who should learn our place. Very well. They will learn ours. She leaned forward, and her next words were spoken with absolute certainty. Effective immediately, Earth declares war on the Vraxian Empire. We will not stop until every person responsible for Lily Chen's death faces justice. We will not negotiate. We will not compromise. We will not forgive. You killed our child. Now you will pay the price. The transmission ended. In the Galactic Council chambers, 847 species looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. Then they began to laugh. It started with the Vraxian delegation, their scaled faces showing genuine amusement. The laughter spread through the chamber. Humanity controlled 4 star systems. The Vraxian Empire controlled 600. The idea of humans threatening Vraxians was like watching an insect challenge a dragon. The Vraxian High Commander issued a statement dismissing Earth's declaration as the tantrum of children who do not understand galactic reality. The council did not even bother to convene. It was not worth their time. 6 hours later, the laughter stopped. 50 Vraxian military installations across their empire simply vanished. Not destroyed with explosions that could be detected. Not damaged in battles that could be tracked. They simply ceased to exist. Their last transmissions showing impacts from objects moving so fast that sensors barely registered them before everything went dark. The weapons struck with kinetic force that turned metal into plasma. They traveled at 90% of light speed, launched from positions the Vraxians could not detect. By the time sensors registered the incoming threat, the installations were already gone. 50 military bases. 50 coordinated strikes, all within a 60-second window. The Vraxian Empire scrambled to respond. They sent fleets to investigate, activated defensive networks, called for emergency council meetings. How had humanity done this? Where were the weapons launched from? Where were the human fleets? The answer came 12 hours later, when Vraxian sensor networks across 100 systems simultaneously failed. The Empire went blind, their carefully maintained surveillance network corrupted by something that spread through their computers like a virus. When technicians tried to purge the systems, they found the corruption had already replicated itself into every backup. The galaxy watched in growing horror as humanity demonstrated capabilities no one knew they possessed. The Vraxian Empire sent distress calls to their allies, calling for help against this inexplicable assault. None came. Other species were too busy securing their own systems, suddenly wondering what else humanity had been hiding. On Earth, manufacturing facilities that had built commercial ships suddenly retooled. Civilian transports were converted into military vessels. Asteroid mining operations shifted to weaponizing rocks the size of mountains. Every human in the Sol system worked toward one goal. The phrase "Remember Lily Chen" appeared everywhere. Painted on ships, etched into weapons, spoken as a greeting and a promise. An 8-year-old girl's face looked out from every human military installation, a reminder of why they fought. Admiral James Chen stood on the bridge of the warship Retribution, looking at the tactical display showing Vraxian territory. He was Lily's uncle, Robert's brother. He had held her at her last birthday party, had promised to take her fishing when she returned from Concordia. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, "all strike groups report ready, awaiting your orders." James looked at the picture of Lily he had placed beside his command chair. She was smiling, holding up a drawing she had made for him. He had kept it in his office for years. "Begin Operation Righteous Fury," he said quietly. "Show them what happens when you harm our children." Across the galaxy, human ships appeared from nowhere. They did not use conventional FTL drives that created detectable signatures. They appeared, struck, and vanished before defenses could respond. Vraxian military vessels found themselves fighting enemies they could not track. Using tactics that ignored every rule of engagement the galaxy considered civilized. Humans did not aim for military targets alone. They hit supply lines, manufacturing centers, communication hubs, anything that supported the Vraxian war machine. They did not invade planets but made space around them unusable, filling orbits with debris that made travel deadly. The Vraxian Empire began to crumble. 600 systems became 500, then 400. Entire fleets vanished in ambushes set by ships no sensor could detect until too late. Vraxian commanders found themselves fighting ghosts that struck with surgical precision and overwhelming force. The Galactic Council finally convened an emergency session. They had to stop this war before it spread. Humanity was fighting like nothing the galaxy had ever seen, and species were growing frightened. "We must intervene," the council moderator declared. "Humanity has gone too far. They are destabilizing the entire galactic order." "They are destabilizing nothing," a new voice said. The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Margaret Torres walked in. She had not attended council sessions since Lily's death. Her face was thin, her eyes red from tears, but her voice carried absolute authority. "You had a chance to deliver justice," Margaret said. "You chose to mock us instead. You laughed at our grief. You dismissed our pain. Now you complain that we defend ourselves? This is not defense, the Vraxian representative shouted. This is genocide. This is war, Margaret cut him off. Real war. Not the civilized games you play where you count territories and shake hands afterward. You killed our child and expected us to accept it. Instead, we are showing you what humanity becomes when you threaten our young. The Council will assemble a peacekeeping force, the moderator announced. We will stop this war by force if necessary. Margaret smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Try it, she said softly. Send your ships. Stand between Earth and justice. See what happens. She turned and walked out, leaving the Council in silence. The Galactic Council assembled its peacekeeping force at the Maelstrom Nebula, a neutral territory between human and Vraxian space. 40 species contributed ships, creating a fleet of over 10,000 vessels. It was the largest military gathering in galactic history. Assembled not to conquer but to restore order, the fleet commander, a Zelthian named Korvax with 50 years of peacekeeping experience, broadcast a message to Earth on all channels. Humanity, the Galactic Council calls for an immediate ceasefire. Your grievance has been noted. But this war threatens galactic stability. We are authorized to use force to restore peace. Stand down your military operations, and we will negotiate a new settlement for the Chen family. You have 48 hours to comply. The response came in 24 hours. A single human ship, a destroyer called the Remembrance, appeared at the edge of the nebula. It was tiny compared to the massive peacekeeping fleet, barely a speck on their sensors. This is Captain Sarah Kim of the Remembrance. The transmission began. The Galactic Council has 48 hours to disperse. Any ship that interferes with Earth's pursuit of justice will be considered an enemy combatant. We do not want to fight you. Stand aside. Korvax could not believe what he was hearing. One small destroyer against 10,000 ships, and they were issuing demands? Captain Kim, you are outnumbered 10,000 to 1. Be reasonable. We are here to help negotiate peace. Commander Korvax. Sarah's voice came back flat and cold. Peace died with Lily Chen. There is only justice now. 48 hours. Stand aside or burn with them. The transmission ended. Korvax looked at his tactical officers, shaking his head. Humanity had gone insane with grief. This was madness, but he had his orders. The fleet would not disperse. They would force humanity to see reason. 48 hours passed. The Remembrance remained at the nebula's edge, alone and seemingly helpless. The peacekeeping fleet prepared to move forward, intending to push past the destroyer and establish a blockade between human and Vraxian space. All ships, prepare to advance, Korvax ordered. Disable the human vessel if it resists, but avoid lethal force. They are emotional but not truly our enemies. The fleet began to move. Then the nebula came alive. What the peacekeeping forces had thought were asteroids and debris suddenly activated. Thousands of weapons platforms that had been silently drifting in the nebula's clouds powered up simultaneously. Human ships phased into normal space from every direction, their stealth systems dropping to reveal a fleet that had been hiding in plain sight. The peacekeeping fleet was surrounded. All ships. This is Admiral Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. James Chen's voice cut through every communication channel. You have chosen to stand between Earth and justice. You have chosen to protect those who murder children. Very well, remember Lily Chen. The battle lasted 4 hours. It was not truly a battle so much as a massacre. The human weapons tore through shields the galaxy thought impenetrable. Their ships moved with impossible speed and coordination, as if guided by a single mind. When peacekeeping vessels tried to surrender, the humans simply disabled their engines and moved on to the next target. Korvax watched his command ship's systems fail one by one, as something invaded their computers, shutting down weapons, life support, communications. Through his viewport, he saw human fighters moving through the fleet like predators through a herd, methodical and unstoppable. We surrender, he transmitted on all channels. For the love of civilization, we surrender. The attack stopped. The human fleet surrounded the crippled peacekeeping forces but did not destroy them. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every surviving ship's screens. You are alive because you are not our enemy. The Vraxians are. Leave this space. Return to your homes. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them what happens when you stand between humanity and justice for our children. The peacekeeping fleet limped away, leaving behind the wreckage of 3,000 destroyed ships. The galaxy watched the footage in stunned silence. 40 species had contributed to that fleet. 40 species now understood that humanity was not a primitive species throwing a tantrum. They were a war machine that had been hiding in plain sight for 15 years. The Vraxian Empire sent distress calls across the galaxy, begging for help. No one answered. Species that had been allies for centuries suddenly had pressing domestic concerns. No one wanted to face the humans in battle. On Earth, the war effort intensified. Every human contributed however they could. Children collected scrap metal for recycling. Scientists worked 20-hour days developing new weapons. Artists created propaganda that reminded everyone why they fought. The entire species moved as one organism with a single purpose. Lily Chen's face was everywhere. On posters, in broadcasts, painted on the sides of warships in letters 20 meters high. The galaxy had tried to make her death meaningless, a footnote in some diplomatic report. Humanity had made her a symbol that united their entire species. The human approach to war confused and terrified other species. They did not follow the civilized rules of engagement the galaxy had spent millennia developing. They used weapons that were considered too dangerous, tactics that were called dishonorable, strategies that ignored the concept of proportional response. When Vraxian ships retreated, humans pursued them. When Vraxian commanders requested negotiations, humans attacked during the talks. When Vraxian planets declared themselves neutral and withdrew from the Empire, humans blockaded them anyway until they surrendered the Vraxian military personnel hiding there. They fight like demons, a Vraxian admiral reported before his ship was destroyed. They show no mercy, accept no surrender, offer no quarter. They are not trying to defeat us. They are trying to erase us. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions daily, trying to find some way to stop the war. The Vraxian Empire, once spanning 600 systems, now controlled fewer than 100. Entire sectors of space were now human-controlled territory. With automated defense platforms that destroyed any ship not broadcasting human authorization codes. Ambassador Margaret Torres attended a council session for the first time in months. The chamber fell silent when she entered. She looked thinner, older, carrying grief that had not lessened with time. Ambassador Torres, the council moderator said carefully, the council wishes to propose new peace terms. The Vraxian Empire will pay substantial reparations to the Chen family. The guard who killed Lily Chen will be surrendered for human justice. The Empire will issue formal apologies and institute new protocols. Surely this is sufficient. Margaret looked around the chamber at the 847 species representatives. Most would not meet her eyes. Where was this offer 3 months ago? She asked quietly. Where was this justice when Lily died? You offered us a fine and a 2-week suspension. You laughed at us. You called us primitives. Now that we have demonstrated our strength, suddenly you care about justice? The situation has changed, the moderator said weakly. No, Margaret corrected. Your perception of us has changed, but our pain has not. Our anger has not. Our determination has not. You taught us that in this galaxy only strength matters. Only power commands respect. Very well. We learned that lesson. Now you will learn ours. She stood to leave, then paused. The war will end when every person responsible for Lily's death faces justice. Not just the guard. Every official who created the protocols that led to her murder. Every commander who taught that guard that killing children was acceptable. Every council member who voted to dismiss her death as meaningless. All of them. That is what justice requires. The chamber erupted in chaos as species representatives realized they might be targets themselves. The Vraxian Empire's final stand took place at their homeworld, Vraxis Prime. It was a planet of gleaming cities and ancient towers, home to 7 billion Vraxians and the seat of their 300-year-old empire. Every remaining military asset had been pulled back to defend it. 600 warships, orbital defense platforms built over centuries, and ground-based weapons that could target threats in deep space. The Vraxian Emperor himself, Vexthor the 19th, broadcast from his throne room to what remained of his empire. We will not surrender to these primitives. Vraxis Prime has never fallen. Our ancestors built an empire that brought order to chaos. We will show these humans that some civilizations cannot be defeated by rage and barbarism. Let them come. We will be ready. The human fleet arrived 2 days later, but they did not attack. Instead, Admiral James Chen ordered his ships to spread out in a sphere around the entire star system. They positioned themselves at the system's edge, establishing a perimeter that nothing could cross. Then they began building. Automated construction drones poured from human ships by the thousands. They assembled weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and massive structures that the Vraxians did not understand. Within a week, the entire system was surrounded by a network of human technology that grew denser each day. Vraxian sensors watched helplessly as the humans built what looked like a metal cage around their entire star system. Ships that tried to break through the perimeter were destroyed instantly. Communications that tried to reach the outside galaxy were blocked. Vraxis Prime had become a prison. Admiral Chen broadcast a message on all frequencies, ensuring every Vraxian could hear. People of Vraxis Prime, this is Admiral James Chen of the Human Defense Fleet. My niece, Lily Chen, was 8 years old when your empire murdered her. Your emperor and your council believe this siege will break our resolve. They are wrong. We will wait here for as long as it takes. Months, years, decades if necessary. Your system is now completely isolated. No ship leaves. No message escapes. No help comes. He paused, and his next words were spoken with absolute certainty. We want the guard who killed Lily. We want the commanders who trained him. We want the officials who wrote the protocols that called human children security threats. We want the council members who dismissed her death as acceptable. Surrender them to us for trial and this siege ends. Refuse and we will wait here while your empire starves. The transmission ended. The Vraxian military command erupted in fury. This was not how war worked. You attacked or you retreated. You did not just sit and wait. It was dishonorable, barbaric, uncivilized, but it was also effective. Vraxis Prime had been a wealthy world, but it had never been self-sufficient. Food came from agricultural worlds and other systems. Raw materials came from mining operations across the empire. Medical supplies, technology, luxuries, all of it flowed in from hundreds of systems that were now cut off. The Emperor ordered the military to break the siege. Vraxian ships attacked the human perimeter in waves, trying to punch through to open space. Every attack failed. The human defense network was too dense, too well coordinated. Ships that approached were destroyed by weapons that struck from multiple angles simultaneously. After 2 weeks of failed attacks, the Vraxian military had lost half its remaining fleet. The Emperor called for a ceasefire and requested negotiations. Admiral Chen's response was simple. We have nothing to negotiate. Send us the guilty parties or continue to starve. 1 month into the siege, food rationing began on Vraxis Prime. The government assured citizens that emergency supplies would last for months. They were lying. The supplies would last 8 weeks at most, and everyone knew it. The galaxy watched the siege with a mixture of horror and fascination. Humanity was not destroying Vraxis Prime. They were letting it destroy itself, demonstrating patience that was somehow more terrifying than violence. The humans did not rage or threaten. They simply waited, calm and implacable, as inexorable as time itself. Ambassador Margaret Torres gave an interview to a galactic news network, her first public appearance in weeks. The interviewer, a Felthian journalist named Kryn, asked the question everyone wanted answered. Ambassador, your fleet has the power to destroy Vraxis Prime in hours. Why the siege? Why make them suffer like this? Margaret's expression did not change. Because suffering is not the point. Justice is. The Vraxian people need time to understand what their empire did. They need time to make a choice. Will they protect the officials who murder children, or will they choose survival? But the civilian population supported an empire that called my people primitives. They celebrated military expansions. They accepted the protocols that led to Lily's death. Now they live with the consequences. We are not punishing innocents. We are holding a civilization accountable. 2 months into the siege, riots began on Vraxis Prime. Citizens attacked government buildings, demanding the Emperor surrender those responsible for starting the war. The military fired on protesters, killing hundreds. The riots spread. Emperor Vexthor gave a desperate broadcast calling for unity and promising that help was coming. No help came. The galaxy had abandoned Vraxis Prime to its fate. Admiral Chen watched the chaos on the planet below from his command ship. His executive officer, Commander Lisa Park, stood beside him. Admiral, the Vraxian government is collapsing. Should we prepare for ground operations? No, James said quietly. We wait. They will make the right choice eventually. They have to. And if they don't, James looked at the picture of Lily he kept by his station. Then we wait longer. We can wait forever if necessary. That's what they don't understand about us. We don't get tired of seeking justice. We don't compromise. We don't move on. We remember. 3 months into the siege, the Vraxian government was overthrown in a violent coup. Citizens stormed the imperial palace, seized Emperor Vexthor and his entire council. The guard who had killed Lily Chen was dragged from his hiding place by an angry mob. Military commanders who had supported the war were rounded up by their own soldiers. A provisional government formed within days, led by a coalition of civilians who broadcast a message to the human fleet. Admiral Chen, this is the Provisional Council of Vraxis Prime. We have arrested Emperor Vexthor, his government, and all military personnel involved in creating the protocols that led to Lily Chen's death. We have the guard who killed her. We surrender them all to human authority for trial and sentencing. Please let our people live. End this siege. We give you what you demanded. Admiral Chen received the transmission in silence. He had waited for this moment, imagined it countless times. But now that it was here, he felt no triumph. Only a deep, endless weariness. Verified identities of all arrested parties, he ordered. Cross-reference with our list. Make sure we have everyone responsible. The verification took 6 hours. Every name was checked. Every official was accounted for. Finally, Commander Park turned to him and nodded. All targets confirmed, Admiral. We have them all. James Chen took a deep breath and opened a channel to Vraxis Prime. Provisional Council, this is Admiral Chen. We accept your surrender. Prepare the prisoners for transfer to human custody. They will face trial on Earth. The siege will end once all prisoners are secure aboard our ships. The Vraxian people may live, but they will live remembering what happens when humanity's children are harmed. 12 hours later, 347 Vraxian officials, military commanders, and 1 prison guard were transferred to human ships in chains. The galaxy watched as former rulers of a 600-system empire were marched aboard human vessels like common criminals. As the last prisoner was secured, the human fleet began dismantling the siege network. But they did not leave. Hundreds of ships remained in orbit around Vraxis Prime, a permanent reminder of the price of injustice. The trials began on Earth 3 weeks after the siege ended. They were held in a special tribunal built in Geneva, Switzerland, broadcast live across every channel in the galaxy. 847 species watched as humanity demonstrated what justice meant to them. The proceedings were meticulous. Each defendant had legal representation, provided by neutral third-party species who volunteered. Every charge was explained in detail. Every piece of evidence was presented and verified. The trials were fair in a way that made them more devastating than summary executions would have been. Former Emperor Vexthor sat in the defendant's chair, his scales dull without their usual polishing, wearing simple clothing instead of imperial robes. The charges against him were read by Judge Patricia Okonkwo, a severe woman with gray-white hair and eyes that missed nothing. Vexthor, Emperor of the Vraxian Empire, you are charged with establishing and maintaining the protocols that designated certain species as primitives, subject to summary execution without trial. You are charged with creating a culture of supremacy that led directly to the death of Lily Chen. How do you plead? Vexthor lifted his head. Even in chains, he tried to maintain dignity. I plead not guilty. I maintained order according to 300 years of Vraxian law. My ancestors, your ancestors are not on trial. You are. Judge Okonkwo's voice cut through his words. The question is simple. Did you maintain protocols allowing the killing of individuals who entered restricted areas without trial or verification of intent? Yes, but did Lily Chen pose an actual security threat to Concordia Station? That is irrelevant. The protocols answer the question. Did an 8-year-old child with no weapons pose a security threat? Silence. Vexthor's scales rippled with emotion. Finally, quietly, he said, No. The trial continued for 3 days. Witnesses testified. Records were examined. The Vraxian legal codes were dissected line by line. When it ended, Judge Okonkwo delivered the verdict with no emotion in her voice. Vexthor, this court finds you guilty of creating policies that resulted in the unlawful death of Lily Chen. You maintained a system that valued protocol over life, that treated beings as less than individuals based solely on their species status. The sentence is life imprisonment in human custody. You will spend the remainder of your days reflecting on the cost of supremacy. The trial of the guard who actually killed Lily was shorter, but more intense. His name was Draxel, and he was young by Vraxian standards, barely into his 30s. He sat in the defendant's chair looking confused and frightened. "Draxel, you are charged with the murder of Lily Chen. How do you plead?" "Not guilty," he said quickly. "I was following my training. I was following orders. I did what any guard would do in that situation." "That is the problem," Judge Okonkwo said. "You saw a child and your first instinct was to kill rather than question. You saw a being who could not read your language's warning signs, and rather than help her, you executed her. Tell me, Draxel, in your training, were you taught to verify threats before using lethal force? In restricted zones, the protocol is clear. Any unauthorized presence. I did not ask about protocols. I asked if you were taught to verify threats, to use judgment, to show restraint. Were you?" Draxel's scales shifted colors, showing his distress. I was taught that protocols existed for a reason. That questioning orders was dangerous. That hesitation could mean the difference between security and chaos. So you were taught to be a tool, not a thinking being. That does not excuse what you did, but it shows how deeply the rot ran in your empire. The verdict came quickly, guilty of murder. The sentence was also life imprisonment, with the notation that Draxel was as much a victim of the system as he was its instrument. 345 more trials followed over the next months. Officials, commanders, council members who had voted to dismiss the case. Each trial was fair, thorough, and resulted in conviction. The galaxy watched as humanity showed them what real justice looked like. Robert and Linda Chen attended every trial. They sat in the front row holding hands, watching each defendant face judgment for their daughter's death. Margaret Torres sat with them, no longer ambassador but simply their friend, sharing their grief. When the final verdict was delivered, Robert Chen stood and addressed the court, the defendants, and the watching galaxy. "My daughter was 8 years old. She loved drawing, dancing, and asking questions about everything. She wanted to be a scientist when she grew up. She wanted to explore the galaxy and make friends with people from different worlds. Instead, she died alone and frightened in a garden, killed for the crime of being curious." His voice broke, but he continued, "These trials do not bring her back. This justice does not heal our pain, but it shows the galaxy that some things cannot be dismissed, that children matter, that life has value beyond power and protocol. If her death leads to a galaxy where no other child dies for such senseless reasons, then maybe, there is some meaning in this tragedy." The trials ended, but the war's consequences continued. Earth presented its terms for permanent peace to the Galactic Council. Ambassador Torres, reinstated at the request of the Chen family, stood before the Council once more. "These are humanity's requirements for rejoining galactic society," she began. "First, the immediate dissolution of all species classification systems based on age or technological status. Every species is equal in Council votes. Every being has the same rights regardless of their civilization's history. Second, full technological exchange. No species hoards knowledge while others struggle. We advance together or not at all. Third, establishment of human peacekeeping forces at all diplomatic stations. We will ensure that what happened to Lily never happens again. Fourth and most important, the date of Lily Chen's death, August 15th, will be recognized as a galactic day of remembrance. Every species will acknowledge the cost of supremacy and the value of every individual life." The council chamber was silent. Finally, the moderator spoke. "These terms are unprecedented. They would fundamentally restructure galactic society." "Yes," Margaret agreed. "They would. That is the point. The old order killed my friend's daughter and tried to call it justice. That order is dead. What rises from its ashes will be better, fairer, and more just. Or humanity will remain separate from your galaxy. A reminder of what happens when civilizations forget that every life matters." The vote took 3 days. In the end, all 847 species voted in favor. They had seen what humanity could do when provoked. More importantly, they had seen what humanity believed in strongly enough to go to war for. The new era began with the signing of the Treaty of Geneva. It was signed by every species representative, by President Mitchell, and by Robert and Linda Chen on behalf of their daughter. Lily's picture was embedded in the treaty's cover, her smile a permanent reminder of why the changes were necessary. The former Vraxian Empire was placed under human administration. Admiral Chen retired from military service to lead the reconstruction efforts. He worked with the Provisional Council to rebuild a society based on equality rather than supremacy. It was slow, difficult work, but the Vraxian people cooperated. They had learned their lesson in the most painful way possible. 5 years after the war ended, a memorial was unveiled on Concordia Station. It stood in the same garden where Lily had died, a statue of a young girl looking up at the stars with wonder and hope. Around her feet, flowers from 1,000 worlds bloomed in carefully tended beds. The inscription read simply, Lily Chen, 2279-2287, the child who changed the galaxy. Never again. The dedication ceremony was attended by representatives from every species. The Vraxian Provisional Council sent their leader, who placed a wreath of purple and gold flowers at the statue's base and bowed deeply before the Chen family. We cannot undo what was done, the Vraxian leader said quietly. We can only ensure it never happens again. On behalf of my people, I swear that Lily Chen's memory will be honored in our culture forever. We will teach our children that every life is precious. We will remember that supremacy leads only to suffering. Robert Chen accepted the gesture with a nod. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes were clear. Linda stood beside him, and they held hands as they looked at the statue of their daughter. She would have loved this garden, Linda said softly. She would have wanted to explore every corner, touch every plant, ask a million questions. She still can, Margaret Torres said, joining them. Every child who comes here will learn her story. Every being who visits will understand what she represents. In a way, Lily is still exploring the galaxy, still asking her questions, still bringing wonder to the universe. The galaxy had learned many lessons from the war. They learned that humanity was far more dangerous than they appeared. They learned that underestimating others was fatal. They learned that some things, like a child's life, were worth fighting for without compromise or restraint. But the most important lesson was simpler and deeper than tactical considerations or political calculations. They learned that in the vast, cold darkness of space, some species would do anything to protect their children, and when those children were harmed, no force in the galaxy could stop the justice that followed.